What is up, fam? It's Vic, and I'm back at you with another training. This one's going to be about improving your relationship with food. As someone who struggled with this for the longest time in their fitness journey, when I first started, my relationship with food was probably the thing that was holding me back the most. And I don't want that to happen to you guys. So I'm here to teach you my tips and tricks on how to get you to improve your relationship with food while also still being able to lose those stubborn 15 pounds of body fat that you so desperately want to lose. So let's kick it off with a little backstory. So basically, when I first started my fitness journey, I thought that less is more. And I know a lot of people tend to fall into that mentality as well when it comes to health and fitness because we get so caught up on wanting to shrink ourselves. So we think, okay, let's eat less food because I want to be smaller, which technically that's true, but to a certain extent, right? Because there's some science behind it. We can't deprive ourselves of our macronutrients, our protein, carbs, and fats, because that won't do us any good as well. And that's what I was doing in the time being. And it was really hitting me hard with my relationship with food, to the point where I would go to social events and not eat things because I thought it would make me fat, to the point where I would skip out on certain meals because I wanted to save room for the next one and save calories for the next one if I knew it was going to be a bigger one. And to the point where it was affecting my social life as well. Like, I would literally say no to plans because I was like, I can't go to this thing. Like, what am I going to eat? Like, how am I going to eat? Like, I mean, there's going to be alcohol, there's going to be treats, there's going to be all these things that I was putting that connotation of being bad around. And that's the first mistake that I would say everyone tends to fall into, is labeling your foods as good or bad, right? Of course, we know that there's going to be foods that are better for you than others, and that's just a fact, right? So the first mistake is not falling into that trap of labeling your foods as good or bad, right? So instead, we can label them as nutritious versus less nutritious, or we can just not label them at all. And that's my biggest suggestion for you, is instead of putting a label on your food, just focus on that 80-20 rule, right? Thinking you need to cut out all of your favorite foods is hurting you more than anything in the long run, because then it's going to lead to your binging, and it's going to lead to when something you love is put in front of you to the point where you can't stop eating it with no control, right? And that's the thing that's going to kill your results even more, is putting your foods into categorized as bad foods. And then when it comes time to eat them, you're going to overeat them because you're going to be like, oh my God, I haven't had this in 2 weeks because I've been giving it up. And then there you go. Binging happens, right? It's like sugar. We all tend to think, let's cut out sugar. And then we cut out sugar and it's put in front of us and we can't stop eating it because we haven't had it in 2 weeks and we love sugar, because who doesn't love sugar, right? It's good for you in moderation, because everything is good for you in moderation. If you're not eating the things you love in moderation, then you're going to constantly think about those things all the time. It's going to be consuming you. And that's exactly how I felt when I was struggling with my relationship with food, is those thoughts of food were always in my mind because I was so desperately trying to stop eating them altogether, rather than just including them in my diet here and there with some balance in between those things, right? Fueling my body with the foods I love, but also fueling my body with the foods that feel good for me, right? Foods for the body, foods for the soul. Those are my favorite things to say. So this is how I teach my clients to go about it, is build your plate. When you're at a social setting, build your plate by including foods for the body and including foods for the soul. Maybe that's a drink of wine, or maybe that's a cookie or a brownie, right? And then have the things you know you love, or that you know your body needs: protein, fats, fiber, right? Biggest tip. Number 2 is, instead of thinking about what you need to have less of, think about what you need to have more of. I think this was one of the things that helped me the most, just to reframe how I build my plate and reframe how I look at nutrition as a whole. Because I was looking at, every time I was building my plate, I was like, okay, I need less carbs, I need less fats, I need less of this, I need less of that. But instead, I was misplacing that by instead of saying what I need more of, I was putting a negative connotation with that by adding that word of less, right? So instead, I'd look at my plate and I'd be like fast forward to now that I have healed my relationship with food, I would ask myself, what do I need more of today that's going to help me achieve my goals better, instead of what do I need less of, right? Maybe I have already hit my carbs for the day, but I'm still not going to go ahead and look at my plate and be like, I need less carbs. I'm just going to say I need more protein or I need more fats in order to hit my goals. And that's going to be the biggest key to keeping you out of that scarcity mindset when it comes to food, because you're going to be looking at it as a place of fuel rather than in a place of restriction. And then your relationship with food will dramatically improve the more that you reframe the way that you're looking at your plate and the way that you're building your plate, because it all comes down to that mindset part of it, right? So instead of less carbs, maybe you need more protein, right? And in turn of you eating more protein, you're eating less carbs, but you're just not telling yourself that you're eating less carbs, right? Because you don't want to put that negative connotation in it. Maybe instead of less processed foods, you need more whole foods. By eating more whole foods, you're eating less processed foods. So you see what I'm saying, right? Okay, moving on to point number 3 is planning, planning, planning. I will say this time and time again, probably in so many of my YouTubes, but I say this in so many of my coaching calls because it's drilled into my client's head, is failing to plan is preparing to, or, oh my God, I'm going to mess it up now. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail, right? Because if we're not planning in advance, then we're going to go into the situation blindsided, right? Like my favorite analogy to use is like you're going to a new city without a map, right? You're going into a situation, a social setting where you have no idea what to expect, and yet you're saving all of your calories for later in the day so you can incorporate all the things you want, which is great that you want to incorporate all the things you want. But if you haven't eaten all day and you're starving yourself until dinner, that's going to lead to a binge, right? So plan it in advance. So what I'll do is if I know I'm going out to dinner and I know the place I'm going out to dinner, I'll start my day with a high protein breakfast just like I normally would. I'd have my usual day-to-day, my normal routine. I'm not going to skip any meals. And then I'm going to take a look at the menu and say, okay, what do I want to get? What am I feeling? And maybe plan like a couple different options in case I'm indecisive, because I'm always indecisive when it comes to what I want to get. And then I'll plan for that, right? I'll maybe look at how many calories it's going to be and put that in my tracker and take account for it. And then I'll plan the rest of my day around that. So that way I already know what I'm going to have. I incorporated it into my day and it's already accounted for. And if I want to have a dessert, I'm going to freaking put the dessert in there too, because we got to have the sweets. We got to have the treats, right? And the reason why I do this is because then if I need to have a little bit of a lighter lunch, I'll have a little bit of a lighter lunch, right? If my dinner is going to be a little higher in fats, maybe I'll have a meal that's a little bit more high in protein and carbs rather than fats, right? So I know how to appropriately plan for my day around what I want to eat, right? Now, let's say you have a situation where you have no idea what there's going to be at this place, right? You're going to a barbecue or you're going to, a party or whatever it is, and you're going to be drinking and you're going to be eating just a lot for enough that you feel like you can make room with, right? So say your breakfast and lunch, you usually have 500 calories at breakfast and lunch, right? And then you have 500 left for dinner. Maybe your lunch is just a little bit smaller and you have 300 calories with a lot more protein, so you're still satiated, you're still having fuel, and you're not starving yourself until dinner time. And then you have plenty of room to account for what you want to have at the dinner and what you want to have at the place that you're going to, right? Instead of skipping these things together, we can just recreate them so that they could better fit our goals, instead of looking at these things at a negative light, in a negative connotation, and putting that scarcity into our brains of like, I need to eat less because I'm going out to eat tonight. No, I just need to eat appropriately to where I'm going, right? And these 3 things will help you so much in the long run, but also they're going to help your relationship with food, because at the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to. The end result is improving your relationship with your food, and then which in turn will improve your relationship with yourself and your body, right? If it's not healed in here, then it's not going to be healed in the external either, right? I, for so long, had the body that I was dreaming of. I mean, it took me a long time, but there was still like a missing piece, because I was looking at things like in the completely opposite aspect of how I wanted to be looking at things. And I constantly had that thought of food in my head, like, what am I going to eat next? Like, what if it doesn't fit my day? What if I don't do this? What if I don't do that, right? But following these tips and continuously practicing them every day was so helpful for me in the long run. And that's the thing that you want to remember, is this doesn't happen overnight. Just like you didn't get to the point that you did overnight, where you were restricting yourself and starving yourself and not eating any of the things you like. That didn't happen overnight, right? And you're not going to be healed overnight either. You have to give yourself time to fully go through the process and put these habits into place and continuously prioritize practicing them so that they can make a difference in your life and that they can make a difference in your relationship with food. And you can get to that end result where you're like, I am healed on the outside and I am healed on the inside. And you feel like an overall healthy human being, right? Because we all talk about how much our mental health, how much our mindset impacts our results. And it's 100% true, right? If we feel great on the outside, but we don't feel good on the inside, are we going to really feel like our best selves? Are we going to really feel like we can show up as our best selves? Probably not, right? But if we're working on the things on the inside and on the outside, and we feel like a good human being overall, and we feel like our most confident self, then we're going to show up as freaking powerful as all anything, right? We're going to feel like that badass inside the gym, outside the gym, in our homes, naked, in our bikini, whatever it is, right? You're going to feel like a badass because everything is resolved in here and everything is resolved out there, right? In order to be our healthiest self, we can't just be healthy on the outside. We also have to be healthy on the inside, right? And that's my message for you guys. So if these 3 tips were helpful, comment below what your biggest takeaway was, and then send me a comment if you want my Eat to Fuel nutrition guide, teaching you how to build your plate with balance while also still meeting your fat loss goals. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one.